Good evening, you're watching OneVoice, brought to you by Asia One. I'm Kerry Alexandra. Tonight we're continuing our look at the wider context of the US-Iran conflict, looking at not just why Iran's nuclear program is such a stumbling block in the current negotiations, but the history of the US's resistance to Iran having a nuclear program, as of course it itself and a number of its allies do. What role do strategic alliances play in who gets to have big boys' toys and who doesn't? Or at the very least, who's punished for their nuclear ambitions and who isn't? Because when it comes to global nuclear policy, the rules don't always seem the same for everyone. For decades, Iran's nuclear program has been treated as a global threat, met with sanctions, isolation and constant scrutiny from, ironically, other very much nuclearly armed states. Pakistan, in contrast, a country that developed nuclear weapons outside of international frameworks to counter the threat it felt from India, over time has not faced the same repercussions. The same it can be said of India. It also faced only initial swiftly lifted sanctions. After the September 11th attacks, however, Pakistan became strategically important to the US in its war in neighbouring Afghanistan. As a result, many sanctions on Pakistan were waived or lifted in the early 2000s. So what's the real difference between states that have been allowed to develop their nuclear programs with minimised interference and Iran, that's faced the full force of punitive sanctions and the proverbial political cold shoulder from the West, and in particular the US? Since the Iranian Revolution in 1979, Iran has stood in direct opposition to the United States. Therefore, its nuclear ambitions are seen in Washington not just as a security concern, but as a geopolitical threat. A nuclear-armed Iran could reshape the Middle East, trigger an arms race, and challenge key US allies like Israel, something neither the US or Israel can countenance. But if we rewind a few decades, we perhaps see a pattern emerging. In the 1970s and 80s, Pakistan built its nuclear program. But at the height of the Soviet-Afghan war, Pakistan became indispensable to Washington, and nuclear concerns, well, they took a bit of a back seat. As scientists expanded Pakistan's nuclear capabilities, pressure not to do so came, but it was inconsistent. Sanctions were imposed, but then lifted. Warnings were issued, but then watered down. The message, we don't love it, but we're not going to war over it. We have bigger problems. Because geopolitics demanded it. The contrast for Iran, however, is stark. Iran faces heavy sanctions, strict international monitoring under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and near total economic isolation. Pakistan, meanwhile, has repositioned itself within broader strategic frameworks, a regional ally, people the US administration and the world can do business with the World Bank regrouping Pakistan in its MENAAP region, quietly linking it more closely to Middle East geopolitics following the same move earlier from the IMF. And in recent weeks, people who can also do deals with their troublesome, ever nuclearly ambitious neighbours. Emerging as a global diplomatic player, hosting and facilitating not just formal direct talks, but behind-the-scenes back-channel diplomacy and conversations tied to resolving the Iran conflict. So tonight we'll be asking some more difficult questions. Is the US's aversion to a nuclearly armed Iran really about nuclear safety or strategic alignment? How equally are global nuclear non-proliferation rules applied? And why does the US get to decide who has nuclear capabilities and who doesn't? Who made them God? Joining me tonight, Ali Sarwar Naqvi, former ambassador and representative at the IAEA and now executive director at the Centre for International Strategic Studies, and G.R. Baluch, former ambassador and now director of the Global and Regional Studies Centre. Thank you both for joining me. Let's get into it. Let's start with the fundamental issue. One country builds nuclear weapons outside the system and is ultimately accepted into the fold. Another faces sanctions, isolation, threats, and now bombs for doing the same. Is this a clear double standard in US policy, or is there a legitimate strategic difference between Iran and Pakistan? Let's start with you, Mr. Naqvi.
Let me explain this a little bit. It's not the US that decides about nuclear weapons or countries having nuclear weapons or not. It is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1968 and the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency's statute. So, under the two regulatory frameworks that I have talked about, Pakistan is not a signatory of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, while Iran is. So there is a difference between the two. And it is not for the US to decide whether one should be treated well and the other not. It is for the international community. Pakistan has no commitments, no obligations, because it is not a signatory of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran has commitments and obligations under the NPT, and it has to abide by them.
And Mr. Baluch, your thoughts on this?
I think when we are talking of Iran's suspected nuclear program, it should be in the context of West Asia, because this is where it comes, and Israel is one state which has at this point of time confirmed by several sources between 80 to 100 nuclear bombs. So now, here you see Israel, nobody asked them, but Iran, what have they, the biggest power on the globe has gone to war to take out their nuclear processing plants, which are for the peaceful purposes. So where is the LPT? Where are the international rules? None. I think morality is as alien to international politics today as, I would say, light to night. So I think that is the reality. There's one you and me think and say this is how the world ought to be, but there's a world which is just ugly, unfortunately, totally power-based, totally interest-based, and that is what is a worrisome thing for the people who think that how peace can be brought in, how these nuclear arms race in different regions of the world can be brought to a halt. Yeah.
And let's look a little closer at Iran. Since the revolution in 1979, the US has positioned it as a hostile state. But from Tehran's perspective, as you say, nuclear capability is often framed as a deterrence, particularly in a region where Israel is widely believed to possess nuclear weapons. So why is Iran being treated as a threat when the US itself claims its own nuclear program is for deterrence? Is it because of what Iran has or because of what it represents in terms of the regional power balance? Mr. Naqvi.
Well, this is for the U.S. to answer. Why is Iran considered a threat? I'll tell you what I think. Iran is considered a threat because it is a threat to Israel. And the United States is a country which has taken upon itself to defend Israel, to ensure its security, and to stop any other country from challenging Israeli hegemony or control or dominance. Now, this happened with Iraq, this happened with Syria, and now it is apparently Iran's turn to be treated like that. It is something that the U.S. has to decide whether it will allow states to have their legitimate rights under international law, or to penalize them for being a threat to Israel. Itself is a threat to the region. It is an anomaly in a region where it doesn't really belong, but was hoisted there by outside forces, particularly the United States. So this fact has to be underlined, and that is why Iran is considered a threat. Iran does not constitute a threat for other countries in the region, as far as I can make out.
And Mr. Baluch, what do you say to this?
Well, I think Iran, it's the nature of its composition. After the 1979 revolution, it emerged as a revolutionary country, anti-colonialism, and in fact had embarked on challenging the global status quo. So when a country challenges the global status quo, has to have such challenges. Although today's Iran is not what it was in 1979. Now it's actually the generation that we see today of the leadership in Iran is actually is grew up beyond the 1979 revolutionary phase of Iran. It really is a nationalist. Now they don't invoke their Islamic entity as much as they go back to Cyrus the Great, 7,000 years old. That was very interesting. During this war between Israel, America, and Iran, whatever I heard, it was Cyrus the Great, the great Persian empire, the civilization, and so on and so forth. So I think we, the American decision makers, leadership, and even the media has to look at this changed, I would say, complexion of the leadership of Iran. Yes, they started off with a revolution. That is what happens. After all, America is what? It is the product of a civil war or a revolution against the colonial power. So I think it has to be seen in a more perspective of history, historical experiences, and history is static event. It is so evolving. That is what the nature has done to us, which is wonderful, that we evolve. So do these societies. So does the thinking that approaches the politics. So I think the very nature of Iran's society has changed, and the problem is that problem is Israel. It doesn't want to change. It doesn't allow the decision maker to change the perspective about Iran. They want them to continue to see them in that theological revolutionary state, which is completely divorced from the reality of Iran of today. If they start looking at not from the Israeli kind of eye, they will find Iran entirely different. They're so pragmatic, they're so strategic, they are now so forward-looking. I don't have to plead their case, but that is how I see it as an analyst, as a student of history and international relations. So unless the perspective is changed, I think their stance will remain to be seen as biased, totally unrelated to the reality of Iran. Yep.
And let's look a little at Pakistan. It developed nuclear weapons despite US pressure, sanctions and global head shaking. Yet during the Soviet-Afghan war, Washington looked the other way. So let me ask you, do you think the US knowingly allowed Pakistan to go nuclear because it very much needed Pakistani intelligence and strategic support against the Soviets? Mr. Naqvi, let's start with you again.
Well, you see, US may have done what it wanted to do in pursuit of its own national interest. Pakistan developed its nuclear capability because of its national interest, its security concerns. So, whether they turn a blind eye or they look the other side or whatever, that is their business. Pakistan was not to be deterred. I served as the deputy head of mission in our embassy in Washington throughout the 90s. And I remember that there was enormous pressure on Pakistan to roll back, quote unquote, roll back our nuclear program. We did not, because we had security concerns and we were not signatories of the NPT, and therefore we had the right to develop our own security weapon or capability. And that is why we have a nuclear weapons capability while other countries don't. Pakistan has played fair. Pakistan has been very open about it. We were obliged to do what we did. We had a history of 3 wars with our bigger neighbor India, and we could not avoid having a nuclear weapon when Indians developed a nuclear weapon. So that being the case, we have the capability. The US either accepts it or doesn't, but that is not our concern. That is for the US to see.
And Mr. Baluch, your thoughts on this one?
See, we paid our price for that. I remember I was at the embassy in Kuwait, I remember how because we were sanctioned just after our nuclear experiments. We were sanctioned and we paid, but then we waded through that and sort of faced all those sanctions and reactions. But strategically, what Pakistan's leadership has done, whether it was civilian or military, we never were regionalists. We were not like direct challenger to the status quo. We worked with the global order. That is the basic distinction between Iran and Pakistan. Again, I like to challenge your question. Imagine a South Asia without Pakistan being nuclear. So you give West Asia, South Asia to India, a revisionist India again, a racist India again, a India which is persecuting the minorities, the Muslims, the Christians, and all other things. And so much of revisionist claims want to usurp every place that they have it. And imagine now West Asia without any resistance or a potential resistance from Iran to Israel. What is happening in Lebanon? What happened in Iran? What happened in Syria? So I think for the last 70 years, it is this monopolistic power given to Israel by the West and especially US. I think they need to revisit it rather than Israel being their strategic asset is a liability. Liability for the world peace, liability for West Asia and overall peace in the world. Now actually the adventurism of Netanyahu and Israel has really given a huge setback to the international economic order, financial order. 32 million people will will cross the poverty line because of this 40 days war imposed on Iran. So I think the power had to bring in some equity, if not morality, in treatment of these issues. Don't make it nuclear as a pretext to attack something. So what has happened? That NPT has lost its that moral and diplomatic strength that it really, because all these international agreements, there's a sanctity to it. And they work on moral kind of strength up there because there's a consensus in the world. So now there's a country you're punishing which is signed NPT, which keep repeating, I'm talking of Iran, keep repeating that we'll abide by NPT. You still insist, no, you're going to violate, we know it for sure. So I think we got to really look at the international politics from more humanitarian point of view, from what more civilizational. After all, human beings are all part of the same human race. What is happening? Why the world has gone into tribal system? Why the tribal politics has taken over the big powers, India, America, and so on and so forth.
As you've just highlighted, both Iran and Pakistan justify their nuclear ambitions the same way. Survival, Pakistan against India, Iran against Israel and other regional threats. So why is one tacitly accepted but the other one rejected? Is a state's sovereignty only respected when it aligns with US interests, do you think, Mr. Naqvi?
I mean, the questions are framed in a manner in which it is seen as to what is acceptable to the US and what is not acceptable to the US. That is not how we look at it here in this part of the world, or in any part of the world. The United States is not the global hegemon. And this is something that the US has to understand. And all those people who advocate the American policies must understand. Pakistan justifies it for its own security. It's not for us to see what Iran is doing. We are concerned about our own security and our own policies. And we think that it is necessary for our security. And we are the best judge of that, not the US, not any other country. Okay? This should be very clear. Now, has been a very responsible nuclear state. It has been a very good member in very good standing with the International Atomic Energy Agency. I was myself representing Pakistan in that agency for 5 years. So I know very well we are held in very high regard. Now, the US has its own politics, and the US sometimes approves of some country and sometimes it doesn't. That doesn't bother us. We have a nuclear program which provides us our security, and we will maintain it. And that is how we are at the moment placed. Now, our outlook. What is our security? Not any but other countries. So whether the U.S. allows a particular country or does not allow, that is the American perception. That is not, and that has nothing to do with the reality of the situation.
Final question to both of you. If this pattern continues, what does it mean for the global future of nuclear governance? Will the current system of control and limits hold, or will it lose all credibility altogether, do you think? And then what? Mr. Naqvi, let's start with you, please.
Well, you see, the global nuclear governance is already under a strain because there is actually no global nuclear order. The NPT review conference is taking place in New York right now, and they don't have any clear agenda yet because the agenda itself is being discussed and disputed. So there is no global nuclear governance. Pakistan maintains its own position. It abides by non-proliferation norms. It abides by the principles of responsible nuclear behavior, which means ensuring safety and security of the nuclear installations. You see, if nuclear installations are not kept safe, then there can be radiological spill, which can go to other areas, other regions, other countries, and that would be disastrous. So Pakistan, whether there are regional groupings or not, or whether Pakistan is part of this or that setup, this is irrelevant. We are in the 21st century. There are no groups or global alliances or blocs. Each country is on its own, and this has been also brought out by the United States because it talks about America first and it doesn't talk about other countries. So this is a new world. There is no new world order, but it's a new world. And there is no global nuclear governance, but each country is responsible for its own nuclear program. And Pakistan is a country which has always been very responsible about nuclear program, and we maintain a continued adherence to all those principles that define nuclear governance and nuclear.
Well, I think the entire edifice of nuclear non-proliferation is cracking under the geopolitics of global powers. Primarily, the perspective that has changed in the US, especially under the new administration by Mr. Trump. They have withdrawn from the intermediate missile treaty. They have not renewed the START. And several other treaties which are signed between Russia, the erstwhile Soviet Union, and then Russia and America, they are no more valid in a way. And there's one thing more very important, and I am saying this as a student of this subject, that China has to be brought in, because China was not part of those treaties which were signed between US and Russia. It's a time that they can, sometimes deconstruction becomes an option as well. Since now these treaties are now under stress, or some are totally invalidated because they have withdrawn, the US has withdrawn. So it also offers an opportunity to renegotiate, keeping in view the multipolarity, keeping in view the emergence of new middle powers. It's very important. And why not Israel be brought in some kind of a regime. And why not Pakistan? I would say for my as well. And why not Iran? A potential NPT. Of course, they are part of the NPT, but tomorrow, if they want to go nuclear, at least they should be part of that. And in fact, some of the speeches, they say that there are several potential candidates for a nuclear armaments. Saudi Arabia, Korea, South Korea, Japan, several. They are at the, they have very advanced nuclear science development. They just have to, what they call reverse engineer that technology, and here they are. So I think there should be no incentive. Basically, we have to de-incentivize the nuclearization of the world. How can we do that? That is, first of all, good behavior of the nuclear powers at this point of time. If they keep threatening non-nuclear, yes, that should have a big penalty. And then most of all is peace, reconciliation, and kind of absence of exploitation, and the real politique in which even instability is managed. Even the threat of nuclear, why should we go too far? We just heard a tweet, President Trump. What did it mean? That a civilization will die tonight. So, there has to be a constraint. So I think that what the world needs to do is, before embarking on new agreements, is to adopt a good behavior charter for the existing nuclear powers, and then de-incentivize the adoption of the nuclear weapons by solving all the outstanding problems, which includes Palestine, which includes Kashmir, and several other, Ukraine. Why should it linger on under the nuclear hangover? So I think here is a time where the human civilization, again I come back to my old thought and process, thesis, that the human civilization needs a dialogue, a new commitment, and a new kind of principles, and new moral foundational direction for which I think each one of us has to do it. Yeah.
A huge thank you to both of you for joining us this evening. It's been really interesting to hear your perspective. Nuclear weapons are often described as the ultimate equalizer, but tonight's discussion suggests something else entirely. That power isn't just about who has the weapon, but who's allowed to have it and who's making that decision. From Pakistan to Iran, the rules appear less universal than talks and treaties would have you believe. More conditional, shaped by alliances, driven by interests and enforced by political power, because in the end, the nuclear question isn't just about capability, it's about trust, control, consequences, and who gets to play the nuclear game and who gets to decide the rules of the game. You've been watching One Voice here on Asia One. I'm Kerry Alexandra. Thank you for joining us.